Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the lead. Blocked by James. Play with fire for so long. Start this, it's out. Who we got? Shot it low, bring it low in the house tonight. We gon' start this, it's out. We got Delivering in the house tonight.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Delivering Sports Pdocast. I just want to talk about the first podcast for a little bit. For anyone who listened, I know it was really long, an hour and a half actually. So I'm definitely going to try to keep this one down to, about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. That way, I'm not keeping you guys for 20 years just hearing me talk for so long. A couple updates. I'm just trying to figure out iTunes still. I'm pretty sure I figured it out, so I'll put that on the Twitter page as soon as I can. I am figuring out SoundCloud. I uploaded it there. I know some of you guys listened. I don't know if it downloaded as a podcast, actually. I just know it's up there, so I had to look into that. And again, I put it on YouTube. I wasn't able to add a lot of video. A lot of my video files kept getting corrupted for some reason. I don't know what's up with that. I think maybe it was too long or something else. I don't exactly know. So I'm trying to figure that out as well. Anyways, we'll get right into it. So there's been a lot of talk since the Cavs and Warriors game about maybe having a challenge flag in basketball or like having rule changes where you can review everything. I don't know how I feel about challenge flags. Maybe if you can only use it in the last 2 minutes of a game for a coach. Otherwise, it's just going to slow the game down a little too much. Or maybe you can do it like hockey, where if you lose the challenge, there's like some sort of penalty against you, like free throws in the possession, something like that. I'm in favor of just having everything reviewable, whether it be offensive fouls, 3 seconds in the paint, whatever. I'm thinking back to the Milwaukee New York Knicks game last year, where Giannis Antetokounmpo was like backing up on the elbow, and he had his back to the basket for too long, and it should have been a turnover. So it's interesting to think about. There's definitely something needs to be changed because there seems to be a lot of problems. Like I said, like that game with the Warriors, LeBron was fouled twice. Those 2-minute reports that they put at the end of the game, which I think they're just kind of useless, really, because it doesn't change anything and just kind of makes fans upset because they know that they got the call wrong. So what does it really do? Like, you can still do it, just do it privately, like, and tell the announcers that they did it wrong, rather than, just give it out to the fans who are already upset about it. Anyways, I want to talk a little bit about Isaiah Thomas. The Cavs played Boston, and it was really pictured as the Isaiah Thomas game for some reason. He didn't play. He didn't even show up till like the end of the first quarter, probably just so the game could go on without all the madness, and people cheered for him and everything like that. So it was a really disappointing game. The Cavs got close sometimes, but it wasn't really an entertaining game that much. I just think a big problem with it is that they really pictured it as like, oh, this is Isaiah Thomas's return to Boston. But I mean, if considering the guy didn't play, it's not much of a return game. So they just kept panning to him on the bench in his street clothes. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it. It was maybe not good advertising, because it would have been more interesting to me if they had gone more with the Kyrie angle, like Kyrie versus LeBron, considering they were playing. I don't know. It just seemed kind of silly, and now Isaiah Thomas's real return to Boston, in my eyes, is later in the season, and was going to be the same day they were going to retire Paul Pierce's jersey. He doesn't want it to happen, and I'm sure Isaiah Thomas still won't want a tribute video. I think he said on Twitter it was because of family, but in my opinion, probably because he traded him after everything he did for them. His sister died, and he went out and just played like crazy. I think he dropped like 50 points or something like that in the playoffs, and then he just gets traded away. So I could see why he's upset with the franchise. He may not say it publicly, but to me, it's probably what the big problem is there. If I was him, I wouldn't want a tribute video played for me. I'd pretty much just have a vendetta against them. And I'm sure Boston doesn't want to play them early in the playoffs because LeBron will be going after Kyrie to try to prove that he's still the alpha dog because Kyrie left to be the alpha. And then you'll have Isaiah Thomas, who wants to probably destroy the Boston team. And on the other side, you have Kyrie, but he's obviously really good. But just thinking in terms of motivation, I don't think he has much about motivation to go against the Cavaliers. I mean, he went up to them and said they wanted him to be traded, like he wanted to be traded to another team. So, and he had a list of teams and everything like that. So it's not like I don't think he has some sort of like personal goal to go out against the Cavs. I mean, I'm sure he wants to beat them to prove that he is the alpha, but still, like if you're looking at the motivation from both teams, it looks like the Cavs like definitely have the edge there. So yeah, once Isaiah Thomas starts, I think that Boston game and the Cavs game, especially when you transition to the playoffs, is going to look a real different. I just want to take a little bit of time because I was listening to the NBA channel on my radio, and they were talking about Dave Fizdale. It really annoys me when people will talk about something and then they'll just say something that maybe not a lot of people would know about, and it seems like a fact, but it's really not. So listening, and they're saying, that basically the game that got him fired was the Brooklyn game. Maybe not the only reason, but it was a big reason. And I don't remember who it was, but he said like, they were never even close in the fourth quarter. So what would be the point of playing Marc Gasol at all? Which is just wrong. I don't even know why you would say that. Because I'm pretty sure the game wasn't within 8. I was listening to the game. And that was the time, that was the time to put Marc Gasol in and try to make a push because they were on an 8-game losing streak at that point. So beating Brooklyn was a big deal because it's not a good team. You were at home. You don't want to get embarrassed in front of your home crowd, in front of a bad team, looking for a win and everything like that. So he absolutely should have put Marc Gasol in. And I don't care if he's looking for a spark, quote unquote. Look what Ty Lue did against in the New York game when they were in New York. He put in a bench guys, which is a good move, undoubtedly, and they had gotten it close. So instead of keeping him in like an idiot, he put in LeBron James, he put in all the starters, and of course they ended up winning that game. So I think people paint Fizdale in some sort of like magic light for some reason. I don't think he ever really understood the personnel in Memphis. He never seemed to put the guys in the right place. He played Andrew Harrison just way too much for no reason. And a lot of people say like, oh, you don't even know who's on their roster. So how can you say like he was dealing with nothing, so he couldn't have won? Well, basically, if we look at the roster from last year, who made the playoffs of the 7th seed, and the team that he had now, which was nearing last place when he, at the time, so last year they got rid of Vince Carter, and you could say basically he was replaced with Tyreke Evans, who is, I'm not going to say bad things about Vince Carter, but if you look at how Tyreke Evans is playing this year, it's a major improvement. And they got rid of Zach Randolph, and he was basically, his minutes were replaced with JaMychal Green's, who is a better 3-point shooting threat and a better fit for the Memphis. So, and everyone else is basically the same. They added Ben McLemore too, which is an improvement over last year. So if you're comparing last year's roster to this year's roster, it's better. So the fact that the team was worse is, you can't say that. It's not an excuse for how bad the team was playing. So, and yeah, whatever, Mike Conley was out, which is a big deal as well. But just that situation really frustrated me. And I had gone to a Clippers and Grizzlies game last year, and I saw firsthand that he, again, didn't really understand the personnel. He didn't put, I think the Grizzlies got it within 6, and there was about 4 minutes left, and he kept Marc Gasol out. So you can really see, like, even back then, like, him and Marc Gasol didn't really see eye to eye. You could say Dave Fizdale would have done better with Mike Conley back whenever he comes back, and maybe he's going to do better than JB Bickerstaff, which is probably true. The problem with that is, like, what's the point of fighting for the 9th seed when you can get the 1st or 2nd pick? So I think that's whether the GM will ever admit it or not. That's really what he was going for, rather than just saying, like, Dave Fizdale wasn't a good coach, which I don't think he was. But if he's not going to say that, then I think they were committing to a tank, which is probably a better idea anyways. So, I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. It really annoys me when I hear announcers talk about that and like, oh, he's this like glorified coach and he like did all these great things. It's like he wasn't really great if you really look at it. Especially if you look in the playoffs last year, like, oh, he fought San Antonio. Well, he also started Vince Carter against Kawhi Leonard for 2 games. And if you're going to say, oh, who else could he have put? Well, started James Ennis in Game 3 against him, who's more athletic and younger, and they won the game. So it took him 2 games to realize that. So I don't think he's that great of a coach. That's just my 2 cents on the idea, on the whole thing that's going on with Dave. And he'll probably get another coaching job soon. I mean, he's not the worst coach in the world, and certainly he's very passionate, but personally, I don't think he was as glorified as he's as glorified, or he shouldn't be as glorified as he is. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to go into the first round of the NFL playoffs, which obviously start on Sunday. So first matchup here is going to be Kansas City and the Titans. The winner plays New England. So just a quick look at their stats. I'm going to go by how well the team passes, how well the team runs, and then I'm going to look at their defensive stats about how they are against the passing game and against the running game, and just kind of see what the matchups look like there. So Kansas City is 7th in passing yards per game and 9th in rushing yards per game. On the defensive side, they're 29th in passing yards allowed per game and 25th in rushing yards allowed per game. Titans are 23rd in passing yards per game and 15th in rushing yards per game. On the defensive side, they're 25th in passing yards allowed per game and 4th in rushing yards allowed per game. So just looking at the matchups, Kansas City obviously hasn't had a defense that they've been used to. So advantage goes to Tennessee for their rushing game. Especially they have the dual-headed monster with Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray. So if Tennessee's going to win that game, that's going to be why. Unfortunately for... Kansas City obviously sometimes forget to give the ball to their running backs. For some unforeseen reason, Kareem Hunt in the beginning of the year was killing it, like 125 yards per game almost total. The second half of the season, they forgot to give it to him. I don't know why. Tennessee's good against the run, but if Kansas City is going to control this game, it's going to have to be through him. I don't know. Sometimes I just don't understand any read. It seems like sometimes they have this good thing and they'll just go away from it. I see Kansas City winning this game. I just think that their offense is going to kind of, like Tyreek Hill is going to have a big game because Tennessee's never really been good against the pass, and all that guy needs is just a little space, and Alex Smith will find him, and he's the best receiver, and he looks for him a lot. I just think Marcus Mariota isn't ready for the playoffs yet. He makes a lot of mistakes. It's just not a good matchup for a young quarterback who's looking to improve. And then obviously the winner plays the Patriots, which Kansas City, not a good matchup for them. But yeah, if Tennessee's going to win that game, it's gonna come on the ground, which Kansas City isn't great against. So Tennessee's going to have to grind it out, in my opinion, if they're going to win that game. In terms of a predicting score, I see it as a 28-20 win for Kansas, and I think it's going to come from a late touchdown from Tennessee for the 20 points, so it's not going to be really that close. Maybe they'll score like the last like under 2 minutes, and they'll have a chance at an onside kick, but I don't see much more than that. On to Jacksonville and Buffalo. Oh, what a dumpster fire of a game. The fact that those two teams are in the playoffs. Jacksonville is 17th in passing yards per game and first in rushing yards per game. First in passing yards against per game and 21st in rushing yards against per game. Buffalo is 31st in passing yards per game, which is a little skewed. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. 6th in rushing yards per game, 20th in passing yards allowed per game, and 29th in rushing yards allowed per game. So Buffalo clearly struggling against everything, particularly the run. And as I just mentioned, Jacksonville is number 1 in rushing yards per game. So I don't expect this game to be close at all. I think Jacksonville is going to absolutely obliterate Buffalo. I think they're just going to be able to run the ball with anybody. and they're 31st in passing yards per game. That's because they started that bum in quarterback. I can't even tell you his name right now. So they'll probably be closer to like 25th or something with Tyrod Taylor. But even still, Jacksonville is first in yards allowed per game. And I'm pretty sure LaShawn McCoy's hurt, so Buffalo's greatest strength isn't even going to be like present on the field. So expect Jacksonville to win. I don't know, 24-10. I don't even think Buffalo's going to be able to put a lot of points on the board. So it's probably going to be a boring game. A lot of running, especially. So I'm gonna watch the game obviously, but yeah, I don't expect much from it. I think Jacksonville's just going to run through. And then and then whoever wins that, which I think is Jacksonville, is going to play Pittsburgh. And Jacksonville already beat Pittsburgh early in the year, but obviously it's the playoffs. It's a little different, so we'll see how that goes. It'll come down to whether Ben Roethlisberger remembers how to throw the football to the right team. He seemed to have games this year, especially Jacksonville. I think he threw 4 interceptions where it looked like he forgot. So we'll see about that. We go on to New Orleans and the Panthers. So the Saints are 5th in passing yards per game, 5th in rushing yards per game, 15th in passing yards against per game, and 16th in rushing yards against per game. Panthers are 18th in passing yards per game, 4th in rushing yards per game, 18th in passing yards against per game, and 3rd in rushing yards against per game. So yeah, the Saints obviously a big story this year. Big bounce back after a few years of not really doing much. Dominating on the rushing and passing side of offense. Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram are just a monster tandem to deal with. It's tough. Tough to play them. Obviously, the Saints and Panthers know each other very well. Saints were able to run right over the Panthers. Alvin Kamara, especially, and all those guys, even though the Panthers are 3rd in rushing yards against per game, seem to be doing what they wanted. Especially when Drew Brees would be able to pass the ball to the running backs out of the backfield. So it's not a great matchup for the Panthers, but anything can happen in division rivalries, especially teams have already played each other twice this year. So I expect the Saints to go deep in the playoffs, just the way they've been playing. Their defense is middle of the pack in both stats, so pretty balanced, pretty decent defense, but their offense is able to carry them far, so basically all they need is one stop or a couple stops, and they're able to kind of push the lead and really go for it. There have definitely been times this year where Cam Newton, it's never been a strength of his to be an accurate passer. But yeah, there's times that he just can't find his guys, or he sees him wide open, but he can't get the ball to him. I never count him out, though. Obviously he brought his team to the Super Bowl once. Very exciting, very explosive. It'll come down to whether he can pass it to the right guy and really control the pace, because they're 4th in rushing yards per game. So they're gonna have to slow the game down, because the Saints are gonna be gunning for it. So if the Panthers just want to play run and gun all the time, it's not gonna end well for them. I expect this one to be very close. Probably we'll see maybe like a 30-24 game in favor of the Saints. It'll be close, but I think the Saints will ultimately pull it out, and the winner goes on to play Philly, who obviously are without Carson Wentz. So expect the winner of this game to win against Philly. Not that I have anything against Nick Foles or Philadelphia, but if Nick Foles does anything like he did against the Raiders in that last game, don't expect much from Philadelphia in the playoffs, unfortunately. Okay, last we have the Rams in Atlanta. The Rams are 10th in passing yards per game, 8th in rushing yards per game, 13th in passing yards against per game, and 28th in passing yards allowed per game. Atlanta is 8th in passing yards per game, 12th in rushing yards per game, 12th in passing yards against per game, and 9th in passing yards against per game. As you can see, both teams are pretty balanced on both sides of the ball. Both offenses are way up there, and defenses are pretty up there too. This one should be good. It could either be a low-scoring game, like a 18-15 game, or I could see it being a huge scoring game, like 35-32 type of game. a big key to this game, since Rams aren't great at run defense, it's going to come down to whether they give the ball to their running backs for Atlanta, which seems like such a simple idea. But if we all remember the Super Bowl, kind of didn't even run the ball like a couple times, but a couple times in the second half of the game of that Patriots Super Bowl. So I don't know what's going on there. They should probably do it. Obviously, Todd Gurley has his MVP run, and it's really crazy to see what a team can do without having Jeff Fisher as their coach. This is definitely the best. Well, it's my personal favorite matchup coming into the playoffs. I just think it's just like a lot of mystery. You don't really know what to expect because you have a young quarterback for the Rams playing in his first playoff game, who's obviously really improved versus a veteran in Matt Ryan, who has proven that he knows how to win in the playoffs, which is why I give the edge a little bit to Atlanta, just because of Matt Ryan. He knows what it takes to win big playoff games, and I think the Rams will have their time. It's just, they're a young team, and I don't think they'll be ready, but we'll definitely not be surprised if the Rams win this game. I expect a 21-18 win, and I don't know who, so I just expect that to be the final score. Like I said, it tipped a little bit to Atlanta, but yeah, this one's up in the air for me. The winner goes on to play Minnesota, which is another great matchup for a team that's done some big things this year. Obviously, they've had success in the past few years, but moving on from Teddy Bridgewater, who I thought was terrible, like ever since he came out of college. So now they have Case Keenum in quarterback. So that Sam Bradford was passing around, although I don't think they're going to go for him in the playoffs. They're just going to go with Case Keenum because he's been able to run that offense really well. So yeah, I'm excited. So I'll talk about that more with the next podcast when I know like what the actual matchups are, in case there's like some upsets or anything like that. I don't want to go too far into it because if I just start predicting the entire playoffs and everything's wrong, then there's no point in me even talking about any of this. So in terms of other NFL news, obviously lots of coaches staying and being fired. It looks like the Bengals are keeping Marvin Lewis. I don't know why. It's kind of confusing. He's brought them to the first round of the playoffs for a few years, and they never made it past the first round. They've blown up every single time. Continually brings in troubled guys. I don't know. Which is just kind of goofy to me. The Browns are sticking with their head coach because why not? They're the Browns. No need to, change anything. Just stay bad, I guess. But obviously the big news right now is John Gruden's 10-year, $100 million contract with the Raiders, the longest contract a coach has ever gotten in NFL history. I don't know what went on with contract negotiations, but that's a long, long time for a coach to be there. They're all in. Obviously, the Raiders are all in. Signing a lot of other guys to like 4-year deals, 2 for Oakland, 2 for Vegas. But John Gruden's taken all over. He's bringing in his own staff, which makes sense if they're basically giving him the reins to be everything. Still don't know a lot about the relationship between Reggie McKenzie and how John Gruden's going to go. I think it's obvious that Reggie McKenzie isn't going to be the main guy anymore, making all the decisions. John Gruden's going to definitely be scouting his own players and kind of telling Reggie who he wants, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. And he's hiring some other guys in the front office, too, who are going to step into Reggie McKenzie's power. Reggie McKenzie's this guy. He's brought in Derek Carr and Khalil Mack in the same season, but he's also drafted a bunch of guys who have not panned out. I think it'll be good for Reggie McKenzie because he does have an eye for certain guys, but not a lot. So I think having help with him is going to be good. And John Gruden's obviously... he's been around the draft, and he's been analyzing guys. It's been his job, so he's not going to be out of the game. He's not going to be out of the loop. He's going to really understand a lot of these guys coming in, and obviously he's got a great football mind besides everything. So it's interesting. You don't see a lot of this where a guy goes to the broadcasting booth after a successful coaching career and goes back. So there's not a lot of data, I guess you could say, on how that is, but it's exciting for Raider fans. Obviously, a lot of good memories, a lot of bad ones too. We beat them in the Super Bowl, but it's interesting. They're all in 10 years, so he's going to be there, and he seems really excited, which is really good. Just seems like there was all the excitement out of the Raiders' potential got taken away after such a terrible season. It seemed like they gave the boot to Jack Del Rio pretty early after giving them such a good season, but it really seemed like he lost control of the locker room and a lot of the guys after this, especially it was really just a sloppy season above everything else. Like there was a point in time where they were actually climbing back into the playoff race, and he was like, "Oh, this is it. This guy's show all we got," and they would just score 0 points in the first half of I think in the last 5 games in a row, almost, meaning nothing. And they're bringing in Greg Olson as the offensive coordinator, which is one of the big names for the staff they're bringing in. He didn't have a successful run with them when he was there recently, but he had guys like Terrell Pryor and Matt Flynn, so it's really hard to say exactly if he is a good fit. And so now he has a real quarterback, and he wants to bring in John Gruden wants to bring in Rich Gannon as the QB coach, who already has a few ideas on how he wants to work with Derek Carr, and particularly footwork, he said. So that's an interesting tandem to think of. So we'll see how Greg Olson can handle the offense for the Raiders. So yeah, that's kind of the big news for right now. I wanted to get this podcast out on Saturday. I was typically going to do them on Sundays, but being that the playoffs are starting, and I have a National Guard weekend coming up too, so it would really be stupid for me to just analyze after game playoffs rather than kind of give my predictions and give my thoughts on what's going to go on. So probably going to post on Saturday from now on, even maybe after the NFL playoffs are off when nothing's really going on Sunday. I'll do that again, but I'll try to get them off consistently, at least on the weekends. And once a week, of course, too, so I'm not just kind of ghost for a while. So last, I'm going to talk a little bit about the national championship game. I was going to bring in someone to talk about it. They're from Mississippi, so they're really experts on the SEC. They keep up with a lot, and being with the finals as 2 SEC teams, he would obviously know a lot about it, more things than most people would, like the small intricacies of the college football season. I'm just going to talk about a little bit myself because I wasn't able to work that out. Maybe if I can get a short little thing out, hearing what he has to say, or put it on Twitter or something. But for now, I'm just going to talk about it myself. On paper, it looks like Alabama is going to just come in and dominate this game to me. It's just tough for anyone to beat Alabama. It looked like Oklahoma could have done something interesting. Obviously, they blew a pretty big lead against Georgia, and you would think with the quarterback, what's his name, Baker Mayfield, he had certainly his chances to win that game. Really disappointing, and obviously he's going to hurt his draft stock a lot. Anyways, it doesn't matter now. Georgia won the game. It was very fun to watch. Lots of blocks and everything like that. So I'm not trying to discredit what Georgia's doing. I'm just understanding how good, Alabama is, and Nick Saban's 11-0 against former coaches that have been under him. So it's a trend, and it's cool to see that they all have success when they leave Alabama. But Nick Saban, obviously, it's looking heavy in his favor right now. So I don't expect much from the national championship game on Monday. And that's what it basically comes down to for me. Maybe there's other people who'd like to debate me, and I'm definitely interested to see that. I put it on Twitter. Obviously, this is a new podcast, and it's hard to get it out to people. So 5 people are listening right now. But when it gets bigger, and hopefully someone sees this, maybe I'll add some hashtags to see if I can catch a few people and bring them in. But hear what they have to say about the national championship game. But it's pretty heavy favor in Alabama. I haven't looked at the line yet, but I'm assuming it's probably going to be around 10 points maybe. Anyways, yeah, I wanted to keep this podcast about 30 minutes. I'm gonna add a little outro music. You probably heard the intro music for SoundCloud, guys. If you didn't listen to the YouTube, I was finally able to add that and figure that out. So yeah, I'm gonna end it here, and thanks for listening, guys.